Tervetuloa takaisin Suomalaisen jalkapallon ja futsalin kehityspäiville. Upea päivä jatkuu. Tästä eteenpäin mennään englanniksi seuraava osuus. We'll do the next part in English. Welcome back. My guest now is Kristoffer Weckström, a fitness coach for Helmarit. Welcome.
Thank you.
What is your subject today?
So I will talk about the Euros. So from this summer, the part where we prepare for the Euros. So started about October, November last year, and the process around that, and then also about the tournament. So the physical side of it.
It must have been really interesting process. First the preparation, and in the end the tournament itself.
Yeah, it's a very big thing, and it's so important for so many people as well. You could really feel that when we were there, and the support from all of Finland actually. So yeah, it was a great thing to be part of.
Are there many things that you would do otherwise if you'd be now starting that preparation again? Saying that, did you learn a lot?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, okay. It's a learning process, and of course over time you learn and you try to improve. But yeah, the short answer is not necessarily big things, but there are always details that you would probably do differently next time. Yeah.
Okay, please, stage is all yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. So in English we go today. So these are the main parts then. Just show you, divide this up into a preparation part, and then we move on to the tournament by itself. Starting then with the testing and targets, and that was actually the starting point for us, for our preparation. Then we move on to planning and the interventions that we made, and then also discuss the pre-camp a bit. From the tournament itself, we analyze our own performance. We look at the potential relationships we could see between the physical metrics and the actual football performance indicators. We see how we compared how the physical demands during the Euros might have differed between also the previous matches that we played, and yeah, finish up with some reflections in the end. So yeah, starting then, let's look at the process. This should be relatively obvious for many of you, I would believe, but of course, if you want to be able to assess the physical status of the players, you have to test it somehow, so we started with that. We also, after that, we could more easily determine what were the gaps in our performance, and of course establish the targets based on that. And then, in order to improve, you have to train. So, started off then, as I said, so November 2021 was our testing day. Of course, we did some planning before that also, but that's when we got the players to meet, so the squad to meet, and we wanted to assess the body composition, look at speed. We had a couple of jumping tests in there too, and also fitness. So based on these test results, but not only these test results, I would say, so we had to look at, so what did we want to achieve, and in what place did we want to see the players to be at when we were at the Euros, at a physical level. So we wanted to develop goals and targets, but we could not only look at our own test results. So we needed to look further than that if they were able to compete at the top stage. So I looked at international level data, research, contacted clubs to get test results. We looked at individual needs from our own team perspective, but also individual players. And of course, your own experience as a coach will influence on the decision that you make on this one. So all of these factors together combined resulted in these targets then. So this is the actual, as you see here to the right, this is the benchmark sheet that we developed for the players. So I wanted to keep it relatively simple and understandable, but also informative. So color-coded these targets into 3 different colors. So green was the compete level. So if you reach that level, you're ready to compete at top international level. We have blue, which is cope, so then that's the stage below, ready to cope with demands of international football. And then the third stage, which is orange and trained. And so here, yeah, it's obvious that more work is needed here to improve capacity. Divided this sheet into different key physical qualities in football. So we have fitness or endurance, we have explosiveness, strength, and under each of these categories we have different tests because clubs use different tests too. So it should be applicable to almost everyone. For us, though, at a team level, we considered endurance to be the most important quality to develop for our players. And this was, of course, based on test results, but also here we knew that, okay, we have a possibility here to impact this quality probably more than other qualities because we have senior players here. And also it was really important for our playing style, our game model, based on when we win the ball, we wanted to transition fast offensively. So it placed a high demand on fitness. So this was our most important task, to develop, to feel that, okay, we could improve fitness levels, but of course certain players had a relatively different focus. So one player perhaps focused a little bit more on strength, one on jump, or depended on. But also to say here, I did not, of course, expect every player to be in green here. That was not the point, right? So it's a generalization first, and then we move on to individualization after that. But I think this was this benchmark sheet then was really important to have when I held these conversations and meetings with the fitness coaches in the clubs, because it was a good starting point to start from, and then from there, how could we then together, in the best possible way, support the players? Because we had to show them what were our goals, what did we want, what kind of player did we want to have in the final tournament. It was important to get that message across, but at the same time we have to respect is the club's player. So we have them for certain periods of time, but most of the time this worked very well, I think. It's also in the clubs and the coaches interesting to sort of support the players. So we found a pretty good line there, I believe. And we also held follow-up meetings here to ensure that, well, we wanted, of course, the players to move in the right direction. So for some players I had more meetings with the clubs. Some players I didn't have to have that much at all because they were supported very well. So how did this all go? Well, here are a couple of just results from a fitness test, a yo-yo test. To the right, we have the November 2021 test results. You can see that we have 4 players reaching 2,000 meters. To the left is the results from pre-camp, which was about 2.5 weeks before the Euros started. Here we had 9 players reaching 2,000 meters, so we stopped at 2,000 meters. So, yeah, I think we had a clear effect. Was it optimal? Could we have asked for more? Well, honestly, maybe from my opinion, I wanted to reach a little bit higher. Still, it was effective, but maybe a little bit better. But at the same time, I felt confident at that time. We are at a good level in terms of endurance. And we also have to understand, the constraints when you don't have direct access to the players as you do in clubs. So moving on to the pre-camp, divided the pre-camp into 2 phases. First 8 days we were in Finland, then we went to Holland for 1 week before going to England. So just a little bit about load planning then, so for the pre-camp, and what we wanted to do here, and this was then in accordance or created in accordance with the goals and vision of the coaching staff. So we had the first few days where we wanted to load the players relatively high and then progressively reduce the load as time went by and we came closer to the first game in the Euros. This is what happened. So here we have 2 graphs. In the top we have volume, which is basically how much did the players do, and in the bottom we have intensity. So volume here, I can just explain volume. So we look at from GPS data, we look at 5 key metrics. We look at total distance, sprint distance, high-speed running, and high-intensity accelerations and decelerations. So this is just, the volume here is a combined measure of those five categories. And the percentages you see are a percentage of match load, so it's relative to the match. So you can see like the first 3 days here, these are just training sessions. So first 3 days we have a relatively high volume, and also we go down there to intensity graph, it's a high intensity as well. And then gradually reducing over the pre-camp. But you can also see that specifically intensity in Holland and Euro, we had 1 day per week there where we wanted to ensure, I wanted to ensure that we maintain match intensity for at least 1 training session. That's important to also for at a preparation state to make sure you're prepared for the game. Moving on to the tournament then. So now we're in the Euros, so let's look at what we did here then in Finland. So this is just some numbers showing, dividing or looking at each game in isolation. What potentially could be said here is that yes, the RPE, so the perceived effort, perceived demand was relatively high. But it's easier to understand probably if we look at these numbers in relation to other teams. So here we see the match average. So it's the total work that is done for each team, including substitute, but the average across teams. So here we can see that we are relatively high in these categories. What's also quite interesting is for total distance, you look at the bottom there is Sweden, one of the semi-finalists, but they are actually, they cover by far the least distance out of all teams. And yeah, we continue a little bit with that discussion a bit later. Just a summary of the last slide, we can see here that we ranked then 5th in total distance, 4th in high-speed running, 9th in sprint distance, and 5th in the amount of sprints performed. But what is also notable here, I think, is that if you look at Germany, France, and England, so they were 3 of the 4 semi-finalists, they were in the top 3 for sprinting parameters. We move on and now look at the relationship between what we just looked at, so physical measures, but also see how they relate to football performance. So key indicators, of course, are winning matches and goals scored, for example. So I did a correlation analysis with all teams included. This is what I found, is that, yeah, we could see that winning matches was correlated with sprinting. So it's not a very, very strong correlation, but still related. So we could see that those teams that did more sprint distance, more sprints, also had a higher win percentage. Goals scored and expected goals, the same pattern emerged. So sprinting, again, both for goals scored and expected goals showed a relationship. Total distance did not. If we look in the other direction, so goals conceded and expected goals against, this was quite interesting actually, I think. Here we could find a negative relationship with all these physical metrics, and what that means then is that it suggests at least that those teams that perform less physical work compared to other teams also conceded more goals. And the same with expected goals against ratio. So yeah, except for total distance, but the high speed stuff was negatively correlated. So in summary then, if we look at what we just spoke about, well, yeah, it seems that at least now we're considering the Euro tournament, it seems that sprinting is continuously very important. And it was related to team success. Also, that less physical work overall is more likely to concede. Well, if you perform less physical work, then you might be more likely to concede goals. At least you were in the Euros. And again, the impact on total distance on team performance seems non-existent or small at best. And yeah, this goes in line with previous research on this topic. But it should be said here also, of course, that if you're a player that relies on covering a lot of ground, you have a high work rate, then total distance will still be important. So at the individual level, it's different. But now we look at averages. If we compare the physical demand in the Euros with our previous matches, yeah, this is just a fixture list from this year, so to demonstrate that we actually had quite tough opponents during the year. But here are some differences that I wanted to raise, and you can see that. So the black bars here are the Euro games, and the brown bars are the matches that we did before during this year. And what could be found actually is here that sprinting and high speed running were slightly lower actually during the Euros compared to our previous matches. But on the other hand, we covered more distance, or players covered more distance, not me. We performed more high-intensity axles and decels, and also perceived to be the games to be slightly more demanding. And I think that is, yeah, quite, you know, what you would expect, probably, at least the perceived effort. So this is what we see then when we compare. So yes, the high-speed running decrease, and so, but always when you look at these physical metrics in isolation, you have to try to put it in. Well, you have to put it into the context of football and try to understand why. Why is it that we see these numbers? And one potential factor here could be, or likely is that if you look at the image to the right, so here we have a representation of the positions of the players in average. So we have Finland to the left, Germany to the right. This is from the game against Germany. And we can see then that for our players, both when we were in and out of possession, we were positioned in our own half, mainly. And for Germany, you look at Germany players, they were also positioned in our own half. So both when they were in and out of possession. So of course this has consequences. And then we look at ball possession. Well, Germany had, I think, 2/3 of ball possession in this game. And against Spain, Spain had, I think, maybe 3/3. So, and yeah, this was also like consistent in all our games. So if we put this in relation to the physical demands the players would face, well, it's likely then, so if we are mostly in our own half and we don't have possession of the ball, well, what we have to do then is that we want to maintain a compact shape. We don't want them to get between our lines with the ball. So then you have to move, and it probably requires quite a lot of high-intensity accelerations and decelerations. But also it requires a high work rate, so total distance would be relatively high. But also, there is space behind us, but we weren't really effective at actually use that space. And if there is space behind, but we cannot use this, the result then would be that, yeah, actually we don't get as much sprinting distance. So you always have to put in relation to what happens during the game. So what are the reflections from us? Well, or from me, yeah. First thing, of course, yeah, to start early during preparation, communicate with clubs is really important. Also, it's what is quite evident that sprinting continues to be a key physical quality in football. So it was related to team success in the Euros, and the top 3 teams for sprinting were all semi-finalists. Our own performance was above the Euro averages, or at least our own physical output, what we did. But if we want to improve, it might be that sprinting distances should increase, at least if it's included in the game plan. So if we want to improve sprinting distances, there are different ways. So one is improving top speed. yeah, of course, by itself, it's a decisive quality. We know that. But it also actually reduces the effort required to reach high speed thresholds, because if you're faster, then the effort to reach a certain speed thresholds is lower, and also compared to a slower player, the slower player has to be closer to her max speed to reach a certain threshold, and that again would be more demanding for that player. So that would help, but you have to be able to do that repeatedly during a match, and in order to do high intensity actions repeatedly, you have to recover fast. To recover fast, you need a high level of fitness. That's evident. For me, for female players, reaching above 2,000 meters in the yo-yo, above 4.5 meters per second in the masters, you're at a quite good level. And then finally, which is really important point, increasing the amount of sprinting per se does not lead to improved team performance. So we have to put these physical measures in relation, in context, in relation to the game plan and the tactical objectives that we want to achieve. But if sprinting is considered a key component of the game plan, and if we are able to execute the game plan effectively, well, then sprinting is potentially beneficial, is likely beneficial for team performance in the future. Yeah, that was me.
Thank you. A great performance.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw that you collect a lot of data, which is normal for, you can say, for every football team nowadays. How difficult it is for you to find that data that really matters for that team?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is difficult, and I think it will always be difficult. One thing is that there are so many measures to choose from, and now this at least starts to get some consensus about, okay, which metrics are important. It's not necessarily that we know that they are the most important, but it just makes it easier for everyone, and they are important. So we choose 5. We have 5, and we stick to those 5 quite heavily. So by doing that, it's just easier. It makes it easier to work.
You say 5 and you stick to them. Do you mean that you stick to those 5 in a longer period? Let's say a period of 1 year? Or
no.
It's just
yeah.
Is it just for 1 week? Or what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean with that is now if we look at tracking load and monitoring load and planning load across, then we use 5 metrics instead of looking at, so you can actually divide the amount accelerations into many different speeds there. So instead of doing that, we just look at the high intensity parts of those. Okay. Actually. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, we know that there, of course, you do, and you have to understand that you do lose some things when because that's in a way a simplistic approach to it. So you do lose some parts, but as long as you know that, then you're quite okay.
Yeah. You say it's essential that you have a good cooperation with the clubs where the players are playing. And I come back to this data that you collect. It's important information also for those individual players. Do the clubs of the players also benefit from the data that you collect?
Yeah, I mean, during camps, so we always, as soon as possible, I send them the report after the camp. So if I cannot do it the same day it ends, I do it the next day. So just to make sure that when the players come back to the club, then that the coaches have the information they need from the camp, also in terms of load and the data, so that they know what's been done, and then that they can plan effectively from there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also on your responsibility, the well-being of an individual player. So it's a good thing to share the data.
Yeah, it's a good thing to share the data if you look at that, and then but that's another point. Yeah, we look at their well-being also through different type of we have questionnaires where we look at how they slept and how ready they are to train the day on the day, and so we have different type of measures and where we look at the we try to have a relatively holistic approach to monitoring their well-being.
Okay. As a fitness coach for national team, it means that you're not working with the players on a daily basis. You see them always a short period of time, and then you don't see them.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most important thing you can have effect on an individual player in your role?
Yeah, it's again good. You ask good questions.
I could put it in another way. Is it that your main job is to make sure that the team is ready to have a good chance to win the game, or is it that you can help an individual player as an athlete? Or as
I was gonna answer that question, but it really depends on a team level. On a team level, of course, then it is to be as best prepared as possible for the game. Right, and then you have, like, of course, you do a little bit work before the camps, just to know the status of the players, where they are, how much they've done, and then during the camps, collaborating with the technical coaching staff about, okay, what should we do, how much, and so on. But so that's one part. But then when they are not in camp, some players might need a little bit more assistance at different times. Like this time of year, for example, some players are between clubs, and they need help with off-season programs. And then you create a program based on their needs at different time points during the season. So it's also that individual approach, and also it's not only national team matches. There is work to do between those two.
Earlier today, I had Mika Lehkosoo here. He will be the new head coach of the national team under 21 in men, starting in January. And he talked a lot about the importance of a feedback for himself. And obviously, he said it's difficult to find where the best feedback comes, because always you have to ask yourself, why is some person, is it maybe somebody from his staff or even his player, why is he giving me this feedback? What's the motive behind it? How do you see that the feedback that you get from? How critical are you with it?
Are you now meaning the feedback I give to players?
No, the feedback you get.
From players?
Yeah,
anywhere?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Because you also want to develop yourself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I think that's extremely important, and sometimes you just, as Mika might have mentioned, then I think that's one part maybe that we miss as coaches, because we are so used to actually not necessarily telling others what to do, but wanting to improve other people, right? That's basically kind of like why we are doing what we're doing, because we get joy from developing others and see a result, find a result. But sometimes I think we do miss that, and myself included, that I don't ask for feedback on my own. It's not necessarily only on your own performance, but also it can be different parts that you feel that you would feel better if you actually could. I think that you could do a lot better if you would get consider that feedback that you're speaking about. Yes.
Yeah. In your role as a fitness coach, you're not responsible for the result. That's for the head coach. I'd like to hear, what's the best feedback for you? Is it the result? Let's say the team is winning, or is it that you can monitor and see from the data that a player has progressed, developed as an individual athlete?
Okay, yeah. Not necessarily from the data. I think it's both ways. You get so much enjoyment from results if a team wins a game. You can never get away from that. But maybe it gives a deeper sense of satisfaction from you when you see a player that you have worked with either come back from a bad injury, or actually you can see that, okay, things have happened here, or she actually gets the chance now to perform at the big stage, and then you really enjoy that feeling together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Kristoffer Weckström, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Interesting thoughts. I wish you good luck with the next process with Helmarit.
Yes, thank you very much.